guards that rotated back to the world, and some of the inmates who...
I mean, this historical beating that he took was actually 11 years before he died. It seems like, again, different sources, you have different details, but it seems like he either killed one or two of the prison's pets. They were cats, according to one source, according to a newspaper article that I found of that time, of 1933. He threw these cats to the fire that they were lodges, and according to a different source, a different journalist, he actually snapped the cat's spine, or that he set them or it on fire. And that's when he took a very severe beating, that he had to be 20 days bedridden.
Mm.
And yeah, he wasn't very well liked, pretty much. It is also said that he was a snitch.
Mm.
So a child killer, maybe a child molester, and a snitch.
And not to mention being essentially...
killing the pets.
Well, killing the pets, killing the really the one source of joy and comfort that a lot of the inmates would, be allowed to show some comfort and affection to, and probably the one source of joy that a lot of these, I think up to 600 hardened inmates, kept as saw as their mascot. So it's little wonder that he did cop a hiding. It's little wonder that he did cop the beating that he did, which supposedly left him near death when he was found by guards. Which I guess, depending on the medical attention he received, he may have been in a somewhat injured, weakened state for the rest of his days, and that he did contract through his weakened immune system,
and the cold,
and well, not to mention the absolutely biting cold, and that's what did him in the end. To mention,
what did the media say about him? Like, I thought for a long time that he was considered the first serial killer in Argentinian history. He's not the first serial killer, but he's the first serial killer of his characteristics, according to criminology. Days like what you read in the media. I'm looking at an old interview done in the newspaper Caras y Caretas, which was and still is very famous. An article where he is his name like a monstrous criminal, and the first sentence says that it is not possible to consider him as a human being. And it wasn't not only the newspaper but the police at that time that they were part, or they would how can I say, be inspired in the Italian school of criminology, the Lombrosian.
The Argentinian police establishment subscribed to the Italian school of Lombroso, Cesare.
Cesare Lombroso.
So try it.
Italian school of positivist criminology. That's what I wanted to say. That cool. It's, roughly speaking, like a very racist... very racist or very, very unscientific method of analyzing criminals. What did Cesare Lombroso do, Chris?
Well, he largely was a criminal anthropologist of the day, who believed that people would commit crimes due to the characteristics of their human nature, which had its roots in their social class, but also, this would feed back into the class's origins, whether they were from a particular social group or a particular group of immigrants, or essentially social Darwinism. As you said, was fairly rooted in racism and colonial exceptionalism of the ruling classes. And
he would pretty much, Cesare Lombroso made, he would, among many other things, but he's better or best known for is that he would analyze the size and shapes and measures of the heads and bodies.
So phrenology.
Phrenology.
And not to mention other abnormal, quote unquote, abnormal physical traits, which
they could be identified as physical or congenital defects that would actually link the criminal as a savage, or they would have stigmas. That's the word that we would use in Spanish. To be more precise, what happened with Cayetano? Cayetano is better known in Argentina for his nickname, El Petizo Orejudo, which means petizo, it's like a midget. Like, it is an offensive nickname, I'm aware of that. And orejudo, it's a big ear, because he was, again, very short, extremely short for his age, and he would have very big ears. So even in the newspapers of the era, the very early news that I could find of his crime, all this, the Lombrosian theory was actually being used by the journalists. He was, again, I said, I'm pretty much sure that he murdered at least one victim. His first one, that he has the most amount of evidence against him. But the media was turning him to a born criminal, that he was called like that. And even some psychiatrists would actually give that diagnosis, that he was a born criminal, degenerate, and that he was absolutely beyond any sort of
rehabilitation.
Exactly.
So, as you know,
the born criminal, it's a concept of Lombroso, actually. It's like that person that has inherent criminality in themselves. So, not because he might have been exposed to violence since he was very young, or he probably have some, he went through malnourished them, and it's very likely that brain never got what our brains need to perfectly function. So
not to mention the inherited syphilis.
But it was never proved whether he had syphilis,
That is true. That is true. So how did the psychological fraternity of Argentina decide to categorize Cayetano?
Well, like I said, the first judge would deem him non-guilty for insanity. And he was interviewed several different times by different doctors among all those time, whether he was in the hospicio, that was like that pseudo mental institute when he was first, and then when he was already in jail. So according to the Negri and Lucero is the name of the doctors that did the interview to him. According to this first essay, he he's considered an alienated, insane, or crazy, that he's degenerate, and that he suffers from moral insanity, that he's irresponsible, and he's very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So this concept, moral insanity, is very interesting because we could actually associate it nowadays with what we could call antisocial personality disorder. That is a cluster B.
I mean, and social morality is very subjective, depending on what culture you're from and how the law is interpreted in any particular area or even time period. But for this particular time, this sense of antisocial behaviour, even as extreme as it is, could be justified, or not justified, but categorised in a fairly, what would seem a catch-all term, but one that I think, was perhaps one of the forebearers of, the modern interpretation, which, we going from, morality to, which sort of implies the code of, the code of, the societal code of the time to, literally the current societal behavioral codes.
And criminologists at that time wouldn't know whether to think, because he had the appearance of a quote-unquote, again, idiot or retard. But through the story, we can see that he would actually try to hide his crimes. He would lie. And at some point, and this is an interview that it's done when he's in the Hospicio de las Mercedes. This interview, he was asked whether he had remorse for his crime, and he claimed that he wouldn't understood what they meant with remorse. He was asked if he knew what remorse is, and he said that he didn't. He's asked if he feels sadness or shame for the death of the boys Giordano, La Aurora, and the girl Reina Bonita Vainikov, which are three of his victims or claimed victims, and he claimed no. He's asked if he thought he had the right to kill children, and this is very curious because he says, quote, "I am not the only one. Other people do it too," close quote. He's asked why he would kill children. He would say that he would enjoy it. He's asked if he thinks that he would be punished for his crimes, and he says that he heard that he would be given 20 years in jail, and if he weren't a minor, because again he was 16 at this time, he would get shot in the head because that penalty existed in Argentina, and it was by firing squad. Well, in this interview, he's also asked if he had the chance he would kill more children, and he says yes, and that he would try to hide his crimes. And he's also asked whether he's a happy or an unhappy child, and he says happy. There's also an interview, the Diario La Nación, an interview that he is, it's done to him like a few days after he gets arrested, where he's asked why he would kill children, and it says that he claims that he would have fights with his family, and he would get very angry, like he would have fits of rage, so he would go out and let go his anger and resentment on little children. So yeah, we have all these elements, like he would kill because he was angry and he needed to let that anger go. He would kill because he enjoyed that, and he would kill, but he's not the only one that kills. Other people do it too, so why is it such a bad thing if he does it?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, criminally insane. Damn. This is such a